Kia ora. I'm Marco Howe, and I'm representing the Christ College Newsroom. Over the past 2 weeks, we've been investigating the problems with Petakiota. Petakiota is the brand new Christchurch City Sports Centre that has gone wildly over budget and has had copious amounts of delays. To aid with our research, we have interviewed teachers and students of Christ College, as well as public and professionals regarding their opinion on the matter.
We have interviewed Craig Hutchings from the Christchurch City Council regarding Perakiore. This is what he had to say. Do you believe the construction of Perakiore has been a step in the right direction for Christchurch as a community?
Definitely. The number of spaces that we need for active recreation and sport and health and fitness, we're actually underserviced at the moment. There is need for more sports courts, there's need for more water space, and all that has been substantiated through the business case for the facility. A high demand for these facilities. Some of our own existing facilities like Jelly Park and Taira QE2 are at capacity, and we need more water space and we need more court space for the community of Christchurch.
What are the main reasons for the delays and the overspending during the construction of Petakiore?
The main drivers behind the delay, one would be COVID. It seems like a long time ago, but the number of workers that they could get on site during that COVID time was restricted. The second one is just for such a large facility, there's a huge need for amount of resource, i.e. number of block workers to put up block work, number of electricians, purely the number of the amount of labour that is available in Christchurch has been difficult for the contractor to engage. Thirdly, which has been well documented, the ground conditions have been quite difficult. There was a well which was used for dewatering because there's a low water table in that space. So that well was making sure that the water wasn't impacting on construction. That well failed, and just where it was resulted was the main area where electricity was coming into the building and fibre was coming into the building for communication. So because that failed, all that ground had to be restabilised, and there was a period of time there which held up construction. So there have been a variety of factors that have held up and caused delays. Probably those three are the most significant.
We've also interviewed teachers and students of Christ College, as well as members of the public. Now let's see what they have to say. What are your opinions on Perakiore, the new sports centre, running insanely over time and over budget?
I think honestly it's a bit of a joke. Isn't it? Wasn't it meant to be finished this year?
I think it's very bad. I think it's stupid that they didn't plan it out, enough, and didn't realise it would cost this much.
It's just disgraceful, isn't it? Like, they go over budget and over time and expect us to pay for it.
I think it's probably a lack of planning.
Yeah.
And, bad budgeting, but we can't help it, actually.
Are you directly affected by the delay in the construction of Perakiore?
In the sense that I live really close by, so the continued construction is a bit frustrating in regards to things like congestion and whatnot. And also I would honestly really love to have the pool right by my house. So it is frustrating that I have to drive a significant way for those facilities currently.
I'm not directly affected by it, but I think it would be pretty cool to finally get in it and test out the new pools and the new slides and stuff.
Not directly affected, just by having a personal opinion about it, but not personally involved or anything affected. No.
From a personal perspective, the space not being ready has impacted on not having a choice in terms of the choices that would be provided by Parakiori Recreation and Sports Centre.
Do you think that it is fair for the people of Christchurch to have to pay for the planning errors made by the construction company?
Absolutely not. I think that should be the company's responsibility, the company who made those errors.
No, absolutely not. It's not, the society's fault for their mishap.
As I said before, it's disgraceful that they expect us to pay for their mistakes. It's just not fair and not good.
No, absolutely not.
So that is what the professionals and what the public think. But the real question is, what do you think? I am Marco Howe, and this is the Christ College Newsroom.
Hello, my name is Robert, and this is Christ College, the Newsroom. Today I'm going to talk about our solar system and what we discovered in the last 50 years. I will also speak about the first moon landing. Helping to understand these questions, I interviewed Dr. Taylor.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
These famous words were said by Neil Armstrong on the 20th of July 1969, which is over 50 years ago. A few minutes later, he walked down the 3 stairs from the Eagle, which is the spacecraft that brought Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong down the moon surface and took the first steps on the moon. This event settled the start for another 6 Apollo missions, flying an overall of 24 persons on the moon. Only Apollo 13 failed, but still returned back to the Earth. But what happened in these 50 years, and what is the future of exploring the solar system? To answer these questions, I interviewed Dr. Taylor, who worked for the European Space Agency, looking at dust coming from the outside of our solar system to the inside. Now he's looking with the help of satellites at the watercolor of rivers from New Zealand to find out what they contain. If you go back in time, you will find out that the astronomy is the oldest science in the world. So there was always an interest in knowing what was happening in the sky and explaining why stars and planets are doing what they're doing. The first thought that the Earth is not in the middle of our solar system was made by Nicolaus Copernicus and was introduced in 1943. This settled the start of rethinking what was happening in the night sky. Then, hundreds of years later, in the 1950s, the US started the idea of going to the moon. But what was the reason for that?
So the main reason originally for going to the moon was a political competition between Russia, Soviet Union and the United States. Complicated by the fact that President Kennedy was assassinated, and so it also was a memorial for a president that was killed in office. So there's a couple of reasons for wanting to go there originally: to prove they could, to beat the Russians, and also to remember a president who was assassinated.
Politics were the main reason for going to the moon, but why did it stop, and what are the achievements we made until today?
It's quite expensive to do, and so pretty much around the same time as they started doing really interesting science with the landing on the moon missions, it was getting expensive, and the United States was involved in Vietnam, and they didn't want to keep funding it. So the reason people haven't been back is because it costs a lot. And you've got to have a really strong political reason for going there. Spending that amount of money for science in one big event is not something that people are happy to do. When the Apollo mission landed people on the moon, it was very focused on successfully achieving something in a technical way, so doing the very best you could with the equipment you had. And it was just a single focus to do that, achieve that. Between times, to make things more reliable and more easier, if you like, and perhaps less expensive, they came up with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different projects, and the technology was always a bit compromised about. So space shuttles are interesting things, amazing things, but actually the reason for a space shuttle sort of disappeared before they even had them taking things to orbit. So a space shuttle is to go backwards and forwards. It's a shuttle, but there was nothing to shuttle to.
Now, looking at the future, the next goal is to go to the Mars. Dr. Taylor said,
"The moon is big and nearby, and we can see it, and putting people there is an amazing achievement. Mars is the next closest planet, and so that's the next easily achievable big thing that you could go to. Personally, I think it's not the best choice of a place to go to if you're interested in exploring the solar system. The moon, because it's quite big, has its own gravity, and so to get to the moon you need quite a lot of energy to land on the moon and then get back off the moon to come back to the Earth. Turns out there's a whole host of asteroids and perhaps old comets that are in orbits that you could get to with less energy expenditure than going to the moon. They would be longer, so there's more danger to the people, but I think they'd be a much better place. Those would be good places to go to. You might even find on them ice, water, which you could then use solar energy to split and produce hydrogen and oxygen, which is rocket fuel in space. And so these are places you could go to and mine and get fuel to do whatever you wanted to, that wouldn't have to be launched from the surface of the Earth. And that's vastly more energy than any of the other options I've been talking about.
On living in the future on the Mars, he said,
I don't see any chance in the near future of people going to live on Mars for any length of time. I do not think that anybody is going to fund that sort of mission. They might fund a short mission to go there to say they've achieved it, but I think it's unlikely that they'll have a more sustained mission to go more. If you look at the current Artemis program, when I last looked, it was 3 missions. 1 to send an unmanned spacecraft to the moon and orbit it. The second one to do the same thing but with people on board. And the third one, and the final one of that mission series, to land someone on the moon. So that's going to the moon once. And that's the big program at the moment.
most of the things in space are too far away to go to. So there are only a few places we can possibly land on. These places give us information about where we are from and how our solar system was created.
My name is Marcello Ferguson, and the Christchurch Cathedral is in crisis. Recent financial data suggests that unless $30 million is secured before the end of August, the Christchurch Cathedral reinstatement project risks being mothballed, which would not only be an incredibly costly use of taxpayer, ratepayer, and donor money, it could also potentially be detrimental to the Christchurch economy. With exclusive interviews with the Mayor of Christchurch, Phil Major, the Dean of Christchurch, Ben Truman, and Cathedral Administrator Chris Oldham, join me now for the facts, the future, and the figures of the Christchurch Cathedral.
Anticipated Christchurch Cathedral is in crisis. A recent update on the Christchurch Cathedral reinstatement project shows a funding gap of $114 million. To make matters worse, if $30 million is not secured before August, the project would have to be mothballed indefinitely, which not only would be detrimental to the Christchurch economy, but would be an incredibly costly use of ratepayer money. But first, some context. Picture the 22nd of February, 2011. The city of Christchurch is completely and utterly destroyed. Amongst the death, destruction, and drama came the fall of the Christchurch Cathedral. The local landmark and heart of the city had flatlined. It was a miracle that nobody died. The destruction of the cathedral was certainly a defining moment of the Christchurch earthquakes, but immediately following them came the question of the cathedral. The cathedral itself was only insured to build a modern replacement of the cathedral in the case of a disaster, something to take the place of the cathedral in the square whilst living a new style different to the former cathedral. And to build a smaller cathedral in the place of it was certainly the plan of the current bishop of the Anglican Church in Canterbury at the time, Victoria Matthews. After former Bishop Victoria Matthews clashed with Peter Beck, former Dean of the Cathedral in 2011, Peter resigned his position and left the restoration job to someone else. After a financial government incentive, the Anglican Synod, the Anglican Church election body, ruled in favour of restoring the landmark in 2018. Victoria Matthews also resigned her position as bishop. Following that, the Christchurch Cathedral reinstatement project finally began under the stable leadership of Dean Lawrence Kimberley and Bishop Peter Carroll. The two built a team and off the project went, with an expected completion date of 2027. Dean Lawrence resigned early last year to complete further study on theology. The Very Reverend Dean Ben Truman replaced him about 6 months ago to date. On the 7th of April, the bishop arrived at the Christchurch Transitional Cardboard Cathedral to deliver a blow of bad news. As published in the press a few days prior, he came to speak about the state of the cathedral reinstatement project. He announced that due to an architectural error, there had been a notable underestimate of the cost of the cathedral reinstatement project. Unless $30 million was found by August, the Christchurch Cathedral would be mothballed indefinitely. The price of the reinstatement project has increased from the last figure of $160 million to a whopping $248 million, leaving over a $100 million funding gap total. The church quickly started a new fundraising initiative, but even if it met its goal of $1.5 million, they would still be $28.5 million short of saving the Christchurch Cathedral from going into crisis. The obvious question is, should the council pay for it? They have already contributed $10 million to the project through Christchurch's rates. What's to stop them from doing it again? Naturally, I took to the people in charge to figure out whether the council should be saving the cathedral from its crisis. The Very Reverend Dean of Christchurch, Ben Truman, certainly thinks they should.
Yes. Yes, they should. And the reason is that this has always been a partnership. So when we made the decision in 2017 at our synod to go ahead with the reinstatement of the cathedral, we did so because both central and local government said that they could assist with that, and in fact that they would only assist financially if we were going down a reinstatement route.
The cathedral administrator tends to agree, however demands that the church also find other ways of funding it too.
Subsidise, yes. Pay for the entire shortfall, no. The cathedral is significantly important nationally and for the city, that both the city council and the government should put something into it.
Perhaps the council should subsidise the cost, but are they going to? Moreover, can they even afford it? I spoke to Phil Major, the Mayor of Christchurch, to find out once and for all.
My name's Phil Major, I'm the Mayor of Christchurch. Being Mayor, I'm in charge, I'm the head of 16 councillors who are spread around all over the city, and we come together at least once a week, or probably sometimes a bit more, to have full meetings once a week on how to run a city and how to spend everyone's money.
This is quite point blank. Will the council subsidise the remaining cost of the cathedral reinstatement project?
What the cathedral reinstatement people have come to see us and told us they're in a bit of strife. Yes. They need $30 million by the end of August. The gap is $100 million, more or less. The issue that we've got is that it came in after what we call our 10-year budget started off, our long-term plan, so it wasn't factored into that. There are some people around, we've got a few issues, some people around going, we gave them, the previous mayor, who did nothing wrong, and council gave $10 million towards doing the cathedral up. Some people were unhappy with that. It's been done as a targeted rate. We've practically collected, which is a little bit off everyone's rates every year. We've practically collected all of that now, so that has got to go to because we collected it for the cathedral, so that's got to go to the cathedral, that's no problem. There is some talk about extending that targeted rate. We would have to go and consult with all the people. The council itself, me and the 16 others, cannot make that decision unless we go out and talk to the people, because some of them will be suitably not impressed, some will be over the moon. So you've got to get a full sort of cross-section.
So perhaps even the mayor isn't able to give us the full answer. But being the most influential figure on the council, I was dying to know where his vote would fall.
Well, I look at it from the point of view that it's the middle of the city, it's the icon of the city, and if I had unlimited money, and me personally, I would say yes, let's see what we can do.
Although we are unable to see the stance of the council, the mayor has claimed that if this comes to a vote, he will stand with the cathedral. Another question on the tip of Christchurch's tongue is, what would it mean for the Christchurch Cathedral to be mothballed? What impact would it have? And whether we would be able to ever see the cathedral return to its former glory. Chris Oldham, the cathedral administrator, personally thinks, given the circumstances, mothballing the cathedral in its current state would be unacceptable.
From my point of view, the project needs to continue. If it is mothballed, it will make it so much more difficult to get the project up and running again at a later date. It will make fundraising so much more difficult. However, from the point of view of those people outside the project who don't see the cathedral as something which is important to them, but think it's just an important building to the Anglican Church, I can understand why other people have a point of view saying yes, it is perfectly acceptable.
Dean of Christchurch, Ben Truman, suggests we are simply too far in to turn back now.
I think the two reasons why yes, we should press ahead is firstly, we're about a third of the way through the project. And to stop now is an it would waste the money that's already been spent. And it doesn't come without expense to demolish, it doesn't come without expense to rebuild something different. And you need to do something meaningful in that centre city site. So there's no cheap option. There's no cost option. Even walking away from it includes significant costs.
The Mayor of Christchurch, Phil Major, suggests that if the cathedral was to be mothballed, it could have a significantly wider effect on Christchurch than initially realised.
I know a couple of people who are looking to build hotels in the square, and then you've got the cathedral sitting there sort of like it is now for quite some time. Mind you, you can also say it took 40 years to build the first cathedral, so what's the rush? But it'll get to the stage where no matter how much you try and save money to, say it was mothballed, and you save money or tried to raise money for doing it up, the cost could get away with you, and the more you save, the worse it got.
A highly considered way to begin to fund the difference before August is to sell the Christchurch cardboard cathedral, including the very valuable land it sits on. This opens up some moral qualms, particularly in regards to the concept of selling a cathedral. However, is this actively being considered as an option? The mayor certainly thinks it is.
If I look at it from a city council point of view, we know we own just about all the other land on the stadium precinct. It makes sense that we own it all. What I'm suggesting, what I'd like to see is the council buys that land off them and lets them stay there, and they can use that money towards the new cathedral, right? And let them stay there and use the transitional cathedral for as long as they need to until the new one's finished.
The cathedral administrator also believes that it would probably be for the best.
It would be nice if it didn't need to, but I imagine it's going to have to, because it is an asset worth many, many millions, and they're going to need that to help fund the project. Also, it doesn't look good if we're going out fundraising, yet we're still sitting on an asset which we're refusing to sell.
But really, is it even ethical to sell a cathedral?
Yeah.
It won't. Not if it's an active worshipping church.
Well, the transitional one was only, as you may have heard it being called, the cardboard cathedral.
Yes.
And from what I understand, the roof is starting to get a bit of sun damage. It's sort of, it's not a long-lasting thing. It was brilliant how it was made, absolutely stunningly brilliant how it was made. It's 40-foot containers with big cardboard columns on it, and everyone's done a fantastic job. But and that was on the site of another church that got totally demolished. So there's a number of churches that have come down, and they're using that. There's one in Manchester Street, St Luke's, I think it is. They've sold that, and they use that money towards the cathedral. So if they can, that would be certainly helpful, I'm sure.
With a general consensus that assuming a church has been deconsecrated, it is ethical to sell it, it has been established that there are a number of different pathways for the cathedral to be funded. But what is the plan for the future? Is the cathedral actually in as much crisis as we think it is? When asked about if the sale of the transitional cathedral would save the Christchurch Cathedral Reinstatement Project, Dean Ben Truman gives insight into the funding plan for the future.
Would that save the cathedral's construction? Would it stop it from being mothballed? Would it end the crisis?
Potentially. So I go back to those sort of 5 strands to making the cathedral project viable. So the 4 donors, church, philanthropists, city council, government, and then the 5th way of de-scoping to make it a more achievable level. Would the sale of the cardboard cathedral site save the project from being mothballed? Not entirely. So I'm not going to give a figure for what we think the sale of the site could be, but it would be less than the 30 million that we need to ensure that the cathedral doesn't get mothballed in August, September. However, it would be a very helpful and significant contribution to that, and I think potentially without the sale of the site, that 30 million target would become harder.
Although the Christchurch Cathedral crisis is not yet over, the matter of fact is that the church has a plan, and assuming everyone follows through accordingly, perhaps they may avoid having to mothball the cathedral entirely. Regardless, only time will tell. I'm Marcello Ferguson, and that was the Christchurch Cathedral Crisis.